Alright guys, welcome back to F1 Drama. With Ferrari supposedly in complete freefall right now, with many of their employees wanting to leave, George Russell has given some optimism to Mercedes, believing that Bahrain might be their worst Grand Prix of the season, but even if that is the case, is there any chance they catch up to Red Bull by the end of it? Very much enjoy your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. Starting then with Ferrari. So the Italian press have been in a frenzy the last few days. They started the season before the season began, talking about 30 plus horsepower. The new cars are second faster in the simulator. All this good juice that their car was going to be rapid this year. Turns up to Bahrain, isn't particularly good. Certainly in race pace, they were way off the pace. Pretty similar to last year's F175 actually, in kind of an embarrassing manner. So Giuliano De Kesa here says, who's definitely, he is Ferrari in a way in terms of sources from the public perspective. He actually says, quite the interesting tweet, "I said at the time that it wasn't the right time to dismiss Binotto," without taking anything away from Fred Vasseur, who's just entered Maranello with respect on tiptoe. Not because everything was perfect, but because experience indicated that we risk seeing a film that we have already seen. So quite the statement in terms of Vasseur turning up into a role. And the article also went on to say here that there's kind of a joke that's running around the British Formula One space at the moment, that Vasseur is finally realizing why nobody wants this Ferrari job, in terms of it's a difficult challenge, the passion and the emotion that obviously infects Ferrari in general, but also the way the structure over there works. I think they also mentioned in the article that because he flew out to Bahrain with Toto Wolff on a plane, they're kind of old friends, Ferrari weren't happy about that because they, I guess, didn't trust Vasseur to keep everything to himself. I don't know, a bit of a weird one in terms of that Vasseur doesn't really have the power that other team principals would have. And this is not just on the team side, but also on the commercial side. Apparently Vasseur has said to Ferrari, "Hey, I want to bring in a new sponsor." And they're like, "No, we handle that. That's our business. You handle the team." And then even when Vasseur is saying, "Hey, I want to make changes to those who are part of the team," they're like, "Hang on, have you got permission to do that?" type thing. So it's just a strange situation at Ferrari, in addition to the fact that many senior staff are looking to leave. Now, I think a lot of these guys wanted Binotto to stay, and because they got rid of Binotto, now they're thinking, well, I might just go out. Now, Laurent Mekies, right, he was effectively the deputy team principal. We saw him at races from time to time doing interviews and stuff to Binotto. Now it seems like he's got slightly less power. Another senior aerodynamicist is looking to leave as well. And these are all the points, right? So Mekies is meant to go. No one is guaranteed to stay right now. Chassis development guy is gone. Engine development guy, okay, their future is uncertain. Simone Resta bringing him back again is possible right now. In addition to many other things going on, there's apparently other technicians that have left recently, gone to McLaren, for example. So, okay, when Vigna became the CEO of Ferrari, there was some reorganization that went on. And that's the guy that Vasseur seemingly needs some degree of permission from to do basically anything. And even the sources say there's a climate of fear and uncertainty that's beginning in the racing department. Some members have looked elsewhere. We heard yesterday that a lot of senior members of the Ferrari technical team are handing around their CVs to other teams to try and leave Ferrari. It sounds like a disaster now. Look, how much of this is Italian press stirring up a story? Because, it was only a month or so ago where all the Italian press is all guns blazing, this is Ferrari's year, and it's taken one race for it to seemingly be an absolute mess there internally. So, several contracts expire, their head of chassis car deal, he might potentially go as well. It's possible Simone Resta returns. So it's an absolute mess right now, and there's even discussions that there's some degree of technical vacuum that was created in this transition from Binotto to Vasseur, because the car was meant to be rapid in the simulator, rapid in wind tunnel results. Now, firing Binotto hasn't doomed their team or anything, because, look, let's be honest here, if Binotto would have stayed, the car also wouldn't have been that quick. Vasseur didn't design the car, and Binotto would be saying, "Oh, he's got to go," type thing. Whereas Vasseur is clearly, I would say, realizing the challenge this role entails, both on and off the track, especially when a lot of their top people are looking to depart from Ferrari and join other teams. So, Red Bull are absolutely loving life right now. And to be honest, if you're Charles Leclerc, that's where the questions arise, because the team is in full collapse. They had last season to succeed. They said, "No, don't worry, guys. We're focusing on 2023, sorry, but they might just well be focusing on 2024 now, because what is happening?" Now, some say that, Red Bull are going to be less competitive in Saudi Arabia respective to Ferrari, because the Ferrari is quick in a straight line. Whether its engine's going to blow up in a straight line, we'll see. But clearly, Ferrari aren't in a good spot, and I'm sure we're going to get more rumors about this over the coming days, but it doesn't look pretty for them to have any chance of succeeding leading this season. Now, this is where the question for me regarding Charles Leclerc comes into play. Lando Norris actually showed, I believe, last night on his Twitch stream, his helmet that Seb signed for him, and I think this is obviously a prized possession for many of the drivers this happened with. So I think Max got one, Lando got one, George got one, and also Charles Leclerc got one. So these are some of the kind of the words, if you guys want to just pause and read, that was said. But Charles Leclerc's one for me was especially interesting. Now, okay, look, in fairness, they were teammates right over at Ferrari. But Leclerc's helmet said this: "To Charles, you are the most talented driver I came across in 15 years of F1. Don't waste it. Be sure to be happy, whatever you do, and smile," and stuff like this. But quite the statement for Vettel to make to Leclerc, right? This is back in 2020 now, but still, the most talented driver I've come across. Don't waste your talent. I do wonder if there's an element here of like, don't waste your talent at Ferrari type thing. I don't know what you guys think about that, but definitely an interesting observation there, because we saw yesterday rumours going around that Leclerc had requested a meeting with John Elkann, the president at Ferrari, to say, look, mate, what's going on here? Have you, can you convince me this team is going to be successful? And if it's not, I'm going to dip. Now, the issue is for Leclerc, where does he go? Would Red Bull take him instead of Perez? Maybe, right? Do they want that relationship though? Especially if Verstappen's going to win the drivers and if they're going to win the constructors. Would they need to replace Perez? Probably not if they're going to win this season comfortably. Would he want to go to Mercedes, given Mercedes' car is in a worse spot than Ferrari are right now, and they also might have to do their own rebuild at Mercedes because, their technical team might not be as good as it has been in previous years, with a lot of their staff getting poached over the last couple of seasons. And then they've got Aston Martin, with Alonso probably wants to stay until he's 50 odd, and then Lance Stroll's not going anywhere because of the Lawrence Stroll thing. So it's just a bit tricky, right, for a lot of these top teams struggling right now. But Mercedes are confident that going forwards, they can make significant progress. They, of course, did that statement to their fans yesterday saying, look, we're working hard, we're not scapegoating anyone. This is the start of the progression back to winning the championship, but it's obviously not looking good based on Bahrain. However, is Bahrain just an outlier for Mercedes? Is their car as bad as it seems? It didn't seem so bad in qualifying trim, but it lacked the downforce required during the race. Its tyre degradation wasn't anywhere near as good as last year's W13 was, and therefore they were roughly half a second faster in the race on average with the W14 than they were with the W13. So it's a faster car, but it's still not great. And Wolf says, look, they achieved their targets, and apparently he says they set high targets, but clearly not high enough compared to what Red Bull have been able to accomplish. George Russell, though, is slightly more optimistic. He says that Bahrain could be an outlier race and might turn out to be Mercedes' worst race of the season. It's not historically been a great one for Mercedes. There have been some, great iconic races with Mercedes cars in Bahrain, Jewel of the Desert, of course, being one great example. But, still, generally, Mercedes hasn't been that good at Bahrain, and last year's car was far better at tracks like Spain and certainly Silverstone and Zandvoort and Brazil at the end of the years and even Austin in Texas than it was at Bahrain at the start of the season. Yes, they had the bouncing phenomenon then, so there were other factors in play, and Mercedes do believe that because there's no bouncing this year, they can fully focus on just straight up adding downforce over time. Now, they're going to have to do a complete concept redesign though, because bringing up like a new upgrade package that's going to give them 0.3 of a second in Baku, that's not going to cut it in terms of winning the championship. But he still does believe though that Bahrain could be an outlier. I think Bahrain as a circuit generally does kind of exaggerate performance differences, because if your tyre deg is particularly good around Bahrain, you're going to destroy the other teams, because the tyre deg is such an issue at Bahrain because of the nature of the service of the track, because they have all these sandstorms and stuff. That means I believe they use a different kind of tarmac asphalt service than other tracks do, for example in Jeddah. So tyre deg won't be so much of an issue around Jeddah, but it's still important to have. So the gaps that we saw in Bahrain might not be replicated when we go to Jeddah next weekend, but nonetheless the Mercedes is quite quick in a straight line this year compared to last year, but it lacks the downforce in the higher speed corners. So sector 1 is probably going to be very tricky for Mercedes, I would imagine here. We'll see how it goes. It seems the Red Bull has the perfect balance of aero efficiency, but also straight line speed and downforce as well. They seem to have nailed that balance. Mercedes certainly didn't. But, I think as Russell says, there is a good chance that this was exacerbating some of the differences. The ability to ride the bumps in Bahrain, the ability to get on the traction, the ability to preserve the tyres was a massive benefit that Red Bull and Aston Martin had, and it wasn't really there for Ferrari and Mercedes. That difference will probably be, coming closer together going into some upcoming circuits. As he said, it's probably an outlier track, for sure an outlier circuit, but it's not going to swing more than 0.3 plus or minus. So I guess what he's saying is they might have been, and they pretty much were, were about 7 tenths, 8 tenths behind the Red Bull on a lap-by-lap basis. But that's a Red Bull absolutely chilling, right? Like, Max Verstappen was going for a Sunday drive. I know that Helmut Marko was talking after the race to Max about the Alonso versus Lewis battle, and he was like, oh yeah, what a great battle they had, this type of stuff, and talking about how things went like into turn 10, right, when Alonso made the overtake. And Max was like, yeah, I already saw it, because he was watching the screens driving around the track. A lot of drivers do this, but he probably already seen it like 3 or 4 times replayed on the screen, because that's all he was doing when he was driving out for a Sunday drive, Max at the front of the field. So, you know, look, he was chilling out there, and even if Mercedes become 3 tenths closer based on a different circuit design being more beneficial for them, that's not getting them to Red Bull. They need big changes. They will bring big changes, and rumour has it they're going to bring them probably for Imola, in addition to Aston Martin doing the same thing. We don't really know what Mercedes are planning to do for the upcoming races, because most teams have something small planned for the next few races in a row, and then they get to Baku or they get to Imola, 4th, 5th, 6th race of the season. That's when they're going to bring some big update package, and Aston Martin are working on one as well. I believe it's Baku where Red Bull have a big upgrade in the works, which is pretty scary for the competition, but Aston Martin have a big upgrade coming in Imola, and they clearly have a good direction to develop their car. They also have about 35% more wind tunnel testing time than Red Bull do, and about 20-25% more than Mercedes and Ferrari do. So that's a big advantage for Aston Martin, and they've got a good base. They know what direction they've got to go. So we'll see what happens come to Imola. But can Mercedes become the 3rd fastest team, the 2nd fastest team in that period in between? They were clearly 4th fastest in Bahrain. Maybe that's not fully representative though, if George Russell has a point on this one. So very much enjoy your thoughts in the comment section below. Just to finish up with a kind of remarkable stat from Fernando Alonso, as is typical nowadays. The first to 3, so the first driver ever, and possibly the only driver ever, let's be honest here, to have managed to achieve a podium on his debut with 3 different teams. When he joined McLaren in 2007, podiumed on his debut in Melbourne, P2 at the time, in Bahrain when he joined Ferrari, P1, got a podium on his debut there, and then most recently in Bahrain, P3 to, well, take the all-time record for the only driver to ever accomplish this feat. So very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this in the comments below. Thanks for 18,000 subs as well. I didn't even thank you guys for that at the start of the video. On the road to 20k, that'll be a big milestone. Thanks for watching, take care, and I'll see you next time.